Good afternoon. We're thrilled to have so many people with us this afternoon to hear more about Escapeline, and I'll tell you a little bit about what they're doing before we start. But I just wanted to commence the session by saying my name is Mary Rose Gunn. I'm the founder and the chief exec of the Fore. I think most of you probably know who we are, but if you don't, we are a charity that is all about turbocharging grassroots charities with solutions to some of society's most complex problems. We provide unrestricted funding, skills, training at networks. And the person who you're going to meet today is a absolutely prime example of somebody with a solution to something that is extremely complex and an extraordinarily awful and challenging problem. This is At the Forefront, a series where I interview social entrepreneurs. It's a huge pleasure for me to do this. And today I'm a little bit nervous because I really hope that I can do justice to Lisa and what she is doing. Escapeline is a charity that is saving children from county lines. And as you will all agree, this is something that is, it is a life and death situation. What they do is they run a sort of three lines of activities. One is working with schools, running programs to educate children and try and help them to be more aware of the dangers around county lines. The second is that they work with parents, raising awareness and providing support groups. And the third strand of activity is that they train professionals who are involved or are coming across children who have been in or are at risk of getting into county lines, and helping them to understand how they can work with the children and save them. And when I say children, I'm using that as a catch-all term for children and young people. To date, well, actually this figure will have gone up because this is what they gave us a few months ago, but Escapeline have worked with over 20,000 children. They have over 300 parents that they've worked with, and over 500 professionals. Lisa is on camera with me, and to begin with, I think it might be helpful if everyone else would be happy to go off camera until we get to the question stage. But as you will see, she is blurred because it is quite dangerous for her to have her face out there in the wider world because of what she is doing. I hope you will be as inspired and as impressed by her as we are, because she's doing the most amazing work. So Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. My first question is, would you be happy to give a little bit of background on why you came to set up Escapeline?
Yeah, hi everyone. So my background is I'm a qualified social worker, and prior to that I did a lot of work around sexual exploitation, particularly post Rochdale and Rotherham, and post Jimmy Savile, where it all kind of came out around kind of the understanding of victims of sexual exploitation and sexual abuse. And from there, when I became a social worker, it was around, I would say, 2018. We started to see quite a lot of cases coming in of teenagers in particular who were presenting signs of challenging behaviour. They were involved in drug abuse, truancy, and there was an element of sexual exploitation. And because of my background work that I'd done in the past, I was asked to kind of oversee some of these cases. And I looked and said that this is something different to what we were seeing in Rochdale and Rotherham. There's something else going on. And from there, I went up to London, where I still had connections from my previous work. And there was a conference I was invited to around modern slavery and trafficking, and it was based on county lines. And I sat there for the whole day and realised this is something that was happening down in the southwest. And we had such little information on it. We knew county lines was linked to drugs, and that was pretty much it. We had such little information. So when I came back, I was telling everyone, this is what we're seeing. This is what's happening to our children. And I think what the worrying thing is that, for no fault of anyone, that because we weren't aware of this, we weren't safeguarding the children and young people in our area. And so this is where I realised that something needed to be done, and that's where Escapeline really developed. And initially it was just me on my own, literally going out and trying to tell everyone who would listen about the seriousness of this and what is going on. And, to begin with, because no one hardly knew anything about it, I think they just thought I was this crazy woman saying in these beautiful areas of the Southwest that we had gangs. But gradually, I think as time's gone on, people are realizing that it is a quite a serious problem, and gangs are coming down to our rural areas as well. So that's really how Escape was developed, and it was just solely on education. Um, as I say, but now we do kind of the one-to-one work, direct work. We work with some of the most deeply involved children who are basically trapped in this, as well as that getting in as early as possible. We also extended to the family as well and the parents, because they become indirect victims to this as well. And we've seen some awful scenarios of the families and breakdowns of families through this as well. It impacts throughout the whole family, not just on the child as well.
So, Lisa, would you be happy to give a bit more detail on what you do and the different, so, with your school programs? I remember you were telling me about, for example, a huge success you had with in one school, and you had a 12-year-old boy who was at risk, and then through the education and the awareness that you provided, came back to you saying, thank you, I now know not to do this, and it's now championing. I'd love you to tell that story.
Yeah, so basically, what we've identified from this is the earlier you can get, kind of that prevention, getting as early as possible, raising that awareness with young people, the better the outcomes. When they are trapped, it is extremely difficult to get them out, sometimes near impossible. So this is where the education sessions are really, really important. So we go into schools. We're now talking to children as young as year 4, and all the way up to kind of sixth form and college age. Kind of the average age now we're seeing where children are being recruited is now kind of that year 7 and 8. So just that transition from primary into secondary school seems to be that most vulnerable age, although we're definitely seeing children becoming even younger than that. But the story you're talking about, just to highlight that importance of how getting in early can actually save a child's life. So we did assembly. Our assemblies normally last for an hour. We also have ex-victims of county lines that actually talk and share their personal story as well, or a parent whose child was involved in county lines, to really give that real life perspective, as well as us just saying what county lines is about and what to look out for and so on. So at the end of one of our assemblies, there was year 7. He was age 11 or 12. And he came up to the teacher at the end and he said, is this really happening? Bear in mind, this is in the Southwest. It's all in like predominantly rural areas. And he said, is this really happening? The teacher said, yes, it is. And he said, I think this is happening to me. I think I'm being targeted. So the teacher contacted us and said that we could you come in? I'd like you to just talk to the child. And because we realized that this could be really an early stage where he was just being targeted, we went in very, very quickly to see him. And in fact, it was myself, because all my staff were full capacity. So I went in and chatted to him. And as he started talking, I realized that, yes, he was being targeted by a year 10, so a 15-year-old. And it was just befriending him. Basically, how he was targeted was actually in school. So in the school at a break time. And it was just basically kind of, because there was quite a lot of violence that was going on at the time in the area where this young person was living. This year 10 was coming up and saying, come and stick with our group. We could take care of you. When you're out, you just stick with us at the park. We'll take care of you. No one's going to bother you. No one's going to affect you. And this year 7 literally thought he was just being really nice. He just said, I just thought he was being really nice and wanted to look out for me. But what was actually happening was this the start of someone trying to recruit him into this group. What I would stress is actually that year 10, still bear in mind a child, and very much that role of his would have been to go out and recruit young people from these exploiters who are above him. But I did a little bit more work with that year 7 to really kind of understand what was going on. He blocked this person. He completely shut everything down and went back to his old friendship group, because actually what was starting was they were pulling him away from the friendship group that was his own age, in his own year. And at the end of the session, we always do a feedback form. And I think this is what really touched me, was he just said to me, thank you. Thank you so much. He said, I think if it wasn't, if I didn't have this assembly or this workshop, I don't know what would have happened. And he said, and I just want to say thank you for saving me, because I don't know what would have happened if I didn't have that, didn't have this, and realized if I wasn't sitting in that assembly on that day, I don't know what could have happened to me. And I'm pleased to say, year on, he's still doing really well. There's no signs of, he's going to school, he's doing okay. He's with his friendship group, and we've still checked in, and he's doing fine. But that just highlights the importance of, having that education, because it's so clever how they recruit these young people and how they draw them in. It comes across so innocent to start off with.
I think it's not scaremongering, but I think it would be really helpful for you to explain some of the really terrible situations that you have personal experience of hearing people talk about, when children don't get access to the kind of support that and awareness and education that you're offering, what they have the potential to end up in.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just briefly kind of highlight how easy it is to kind of get recruited into it. And it's simply from a friendship. It's normally older, kind of slightly older teenagers, kind of targeting the younger age group. And it's happening in schools, it's happening outside schools, it's happening in parks, and it's just simply coming up. It might be just starting a conversation, saying they've seen them around, or, do you go to the same school as us? A new way of recruitment over the last year or so has been about starting off selling vapes. Do you want to earn some easy money? Here's a box of vapes. And what they're doing is just checking them out, testing if, this is what's going to, seeing how they sell, are they trustworthy? Do they share the profits? And then eventually it'll go on to drugs. The key stage is that early stage when they're being checked out, is when they need to walk away. And that's what we really stress in our education sessions. But if they don't, they literally start next stage. We call it the hook stage, where they're being hooked in. And that's kind of that grooming stage of where it's the really nice stage where they're made to feel like they're part of this friendship group. But without them realizing, they're being completely brainwashed. They're being isolated as well, away from protectors such as family. So it'd be all very negative for family, police, school, and just isolate them into this group. They'd be earning money at this stage, and also being introduced to drugs as well. Normally starts off with cannabis, and then it goes on to the stronger drugs. And the parents will see at that stage, and schools will see a child changing significantly in their behavior. They become more aggressive. They use kind of more gang language, and language you would not normally hear them use. They'll pull away from school and any kind of activities, and so on. And when they think they've got them hooked into this, that's when it will change, and they will trap them. And that is the stage where it becomes really difficult to get them out, and they will force them into a debt, which could be through a mugging, taking drugs or money off them, and then putting and stating it's their fault. It's a setup basically, to force them into a debt. And even if they worked their way off that debt, they would say, well, you took too long to pay that debt off, you owe us interest, and that debt will continue. With that, though, will be these significant threats. And this is what this young person will experience. They will be threatened continually. They will have messages and witness kind of films being sent to them of someone being shot or killed. It might not even be in this country, but it'd be horrific kind of films saying, well, that will be you next if you don't do what we say. There'll be threats to their family, to their siblings. So you can imagine that pressure on that young person. their phone will be going off continually. So the demands, you need to be here, you need to be there. I've worked with one young person who would have about, thousands of messages over a weekend, and some he could ignore, but some he couldn't. So he had to stay up all night to ensure that he responded, because if not, there'd be consequences. And there are consequences. Children get beaten horrifically. There's been fingernails ripped off. There's been even fingers even chopped off. We've heard of horrific stories of the kind of significant violence, burn marks, really horrific violence. And also, when it's in the trap stage, the young people, both boys and girls, will be sexually exploited as well, and sold for sex, in the belief that they have to pay off this debt. They get sent to different places, such as trap houses. They'll get dumped in horrific kind of bandos, which are like abandoned buildings, or trap houses, where they could be sent there for days, sometimes weeks, have no idea when they're going to leave. And it's absolutely petrifying, but they can't show it. They'll put on sometimes this bravado that they're okay, they can deal with this and so on. But I've sat in front of, boys in particular, crying, absolutely sobbing out of fear, because they don't know how to get out of this. They don't know, they just don't know what's going to happen to them. And the saddest thing I would say at the moment is the children are getting younger. And just before Christmas, we had a real shock, because we were seeing more and more 10-year-olds coming in. So the primary school age of children coming in, referrals coming in for our services. But sadly, as I say, just before Christmas, we had our youngest, which was 6 years old, which came in, and it shocked us all completely. A 6-year-old was being shown basically how to deliver the drugs. And also he was being forced to even try and beat someone up by someone being held down. And it's the kind of thing you just cannot imagine. And when I went out and I had to go out and see this young person, it just breaks your heart every time, because you just can't believe this is happening in this country. You just can't believe. And that's where, we are now seeing more and more younger primary school children being targeted, because it's all that cover of basically, you're not going to expect a primary school child to be out doing drug running. So that's why they target them.
Thank you, Lisa. I think anyone listening to this is going to be like me, slightly, just speechless in hearing what you've just said. For you, what do you feel are your greatest challenges around the issue at the moment? Are people aware of it? Is awareness something that is a real challenge for you? Because you're based in Wiltshire, but Escapeline works across the southwest. It's not instinctively a part of the country that people would think this is going on. People would think the big cities, but they wouldn't think sort of sleepy seaside towns in Dorset would have this sort of a problem.
Yeah, it's definitely increasing in the southwest, and I think the reason for that is we have seen the government put a lot of money into the cities, because that's where they do come from. That's where the kind of the business model is based as such, is in the big cities, and then they come down. And a lot of money has been put into the big cities to do that disruption. But what seems to have come from that is the fact that they've moved out and coming down to more rural areas where the funding isn't there, the resources are not there, and they're able to kind of operate a lot more freely and easier because of that lack of resources. We did try and apply for funding to the government when they put out this big kind of funding, but we couldn't even apply for it because of where we were based in the southwest. So over the last couple of years, we've definitely seen an increase, and that is our biggest problem, is because we haven't got the resources to deal with it. And it's just becoming bigger and bigger. And I think sometimes very much down in the southwest as well, there is that lack of awareness. I don't think people, I mean, it's getting better, but still, people don't realise. A lot of parents, if you mention county lines to them, they might say, I've not heard of it, or isn't that in the cities? Does that happen in the cities? So there is that lack of awareness. And I think it's that understanding as well about it. Even sometimes with professionals we work with, they look at kind of criminal exploitation as solely a child doing drug running. But that does not have to be the case at all, because some children might not be very good at it as such. I mean, we've had one young person who kept being caught all the time, but they didn't just go, okay, you can go off now, we don't need you anymore. They'll use that young person for anything to enable this illegal drug business to operate. So that might be stealing the bikes for the runners, or stealing the mobile phones, or getting involved in antisocial behavior to distract the police towards that kind of line of criminality and away from that legal drug business. So they'll use the young people for all sorts of kind of criminal activity, so that the adults running it are taking the back seat and not being identified at all, and enabling that illegal drug business to operate. And I think, that's as I say, it's not just drug running, it's criminal exploitation. And sometimes we've had to challenge professionals in saying, well, there's no sign of that young person drug running, even though they might be perpetrating violence or involved in antisocial behavior. It is still criminal exploitation. So I think some of our challenges are that there is that lack of understanding, lack of money down here, and the lack of resources to be able to kind of get to as many young people as possible. I mean, we are completely stretched. Our resources are at full capacity. There's sometimes weeks I'm working 60 hours a week, because you're just, the demand is so high, and it's heartbreaking if you have to turn away a child. And so we avoid that as much as we can.
Yeah. What is driving what's behind this increasing number of children that are being brought into these gangs? Is it the demand? And
yeah,
where is the demand coming from, as in people wanting the drugs?
Yeah, so we've done a bit of research on this, because there is definitely an increase, and there are different figures coming out, although they don't always publicize them fully. But we've had figures of up to 2,700 county line gangs are operating here. It's a really high amount that I don't know how you could disrupt all those lines. But I think one of the things from our research that has come out over the last couple of years is it's known as the Gucci drug, the cocaine. And they call it the Gucci drug because it's middle class kind of professionals are using this drug as that kind of the Friday evening, the weekend party drug. So instead of your glass of wine, relaxing over weekend, cocaine seems to be the kind of drug to use now to party and relax and so on. And this is a real significant increase we have seen over these last couple of years. And of course, that just drives this illegal drug business. It's cocaine is a very expensive drug. It's what they make a lot of money from. So from this, it is increasing that demand. And then that's something that, we are driven to try and reduce. And we are looking at doing a campaign around this to try and highlight, because I think if people realized that they just think they're a party drug, they're just going to order their drug, not realizing what is behind this, and what that there could be a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old or 10-year-old being exploited to deliver these drugs, to supply this drug for them. Maybe it'll make them think what actually what they're doing, and what the result could be.
Is there a standard profile for the kind of child or young person that is brought into county lines? Are they, do you notice that all of the kids are often from single parent families, or are they, or actually is any child, is it a situation where you're now finding that children from what you would have classed as being incredibly kind of supportive families are, if they're unlucky, finding themselves targeted too? Is this something that people can relax about thinking, oh, it's fine because I live in this sort of area and this sort of thing doesn't happen where I am.
Any child can be targeted. Back when, I was a social worker and right in those early days of setting up Escapeline, I would say, predominantly it was the vulnerable children that maybe were already known to children's social care, that were involved in criminal activity, known to taking drugs. But I would say over the last couple of years, there's definitely an increase in kind of middle class families, families with professionals, um, because you would not expect a child to be out doing drug running, that is not on anyone's radar. And they actually called them a name. They called them clean skins, because they're not known to anyone. So any child being targeted, and the families we've started to support, a lot of them are professionals, a lot of them run their own businesses. Some of the children go to private schools. So any child can be targeted. It really doesn't matter of their background at all. And we're seeing a lot more girls as well being targeted. So before it's, there was a predominant number of boys, but now we're seeing a lot more girls being targeted as well. So the whole dynamics are changing from the children getting younger, more girls being recruited, and basically any child can be targeted.
I think that is something that if we could raise awareness of that, it's the sort of thing that is going to, people can't just say, oh, it's not going to be a problem for me, and therefore it is something that we all need to really do something about because it affects everybody. Yeah, I feel that's hopefully something that is quite a wake-up call for some people. As a charity, where do you get most of your support from? So how do you raise money? What is it that's, what are the different areas where your services are the support for your services is coming from?
Well, yourselves is one, but we also, well, from Children in Need, National Lottery, some large grants, local community foundation, sometimes from the police crime commissioners. We don't get very much from the local authority, as such, or even the government. And again, I just think that's because of the area we're at. It's just not understood, and that's one of our kind of frustrations. And we try and do fundraising, but sometimes I think, and this is why, we try and put out this, the children we are supporting, some members of public could look at those children as, well, they're the nightmare children in the community. They're causing trouble in the community. If only they actually knew what was going on. And that's some of our kind of challenges sometimes, is that when we say, well, this is what we're doing, oh, but those are the children that are out there, causing antisocial behavior. So it's trying to, if we're doing fundraising, we always trying to do that education element of it as well, to combine both, to highlight and understand what is actually going on, and that, don't just look on the surface, because you don't know what's happening in reality. I always, think to myself, when we see on social media, it's one of my frustrations of a child going missing. And it just states a child is going missing. It just says a child is missing, like a teenager maybe had fallen out with their parents or something. We sometimes know of those children because of us. And I think if only the public knew that story behind that child, that we don't know where that child is. They're probably in some trap house somewhere, absolutely petrified, having no idea when they're going to be able to come back home, receiving threats, being beaten up. But sometimes it can just be put across there on that social media of, it's a child gone missing, teenager gone missing. So it's really.
Could you explain what you mean by a trap house?
Yeah, so it's like a drug den, basically. So it's a place where, there's sometimes prostitution going on. It's a place where there'll be drug users, where the base will be, where they'll come and go to collect their drugs, pick up their drugs. So a young person will be there having to exchange the drugs and the money. And it is frightening for that child. There will be Class A drug users there, needles all over the floor, filthy, dirty. Sometimes they won't have any, access to sanitation, or even going to the toilet. They're very little food, and they'll be just constantly working, nowhere to sleep. They'll be curled up on the floor, really horrific conditions. And this is where sometimes young people are sent to. And it is proper kind of child slavery. It's the only terminology I could describe it as is, the horrific conditions and how frightening it must be for a child. And we know children as young as 10 have been sent there. So, that's how frightening, you just can't imagine the kind of emotional harm that also goes with this, as well as the physical, the sexual as well.
You're using the support that we're giving you to primarily back a pilot that you're doing with Wiltshire Police at the moment.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that and the potential that, if that works, the potential that it has to be something that you could work with other police forces?
Yeah, so this is a trial which hopefully will go out nationally. So to identify a child so when they're kind of trapped in county lines, you identify as a child that is basically under the Modern Slavery and Human Trafficking Act. So they're being used as a slave and being trafficked. Now it's called the NRM. So when you've identified a child that is going missing regularly, that is involved in criminal activity, and meeting all those kind of signs of a child being exploited, professionals are expected to fill out what's called a national Fore mechanism, which will then identify, and it kind of gets assessed. And if it meets a certain threshold, they'll be identified as a child who's a victim of modern slavery and human trafficking. More funding can be brought in, and extra support could be then provided for that young person. The issue we've got at the moment is that if anywhere in the country, if you fill out, any professional fills out a national Fore mechanism, it goes to the Home Office in London. Of course, they will have thousands coming through, and it will take months and months and months and months for it to be processed. And in that time, things are escalating significantly for that child. So what we're doing is a pilot project with Wiltshire, through the Home Office, whereby the national Fore mechanism is assessed locally, so they can be processed quicker, and then we would then do the follow-up work afterwards, from those children that are identified as being a victim of modern slavery and human trafficking. And it's doing very well. We've had the Home Office down, and they're very happy with how it is going. Therefore, I think this is something that, when it's completed, this will be put across nationally.
I'm thrilled to hear that, not least because we've kind of hopefully helped unlock that happening. But I mean, it seems something that's such an obvious change to make, which is, so often the problem when you have these hugely bureaucratic systems, that until it takes someone like you to come and say, hey, can we shortcut some of this to make it happen faster? But congratulations, I'm delighted that it's going so well.
Thank you.
So for you, before I open it up to see what questions we might have from people listening, as an organization, what are the biggest challenges that you are facing with increasing demand for your services? Funding is getting harder and harder at the moment across the sector, and also obviously there's a massive need in terms of raising awareness. But what are the challenges that are the ones that are most keeping you awake at night at the moment? And possibly there might be somebody on here who might have some ideas and how they could help you with some of these.
Yeah, I think, like a lot of charities, we struggle with, there's a competition obviously for funding, and the demand for our service is just escalated. I mean, just to give you an example, back 2 years ago, so we go through our figures kind of from the academic year. So back, I'm going on kind of memory, 2021 to 2022, we educated, supported just over 7,000 young people. Last year, we educated, supported over, 16,000, it was something like 16,600 or 700 in that academic year. And already, just in this first term, we have educated and supported just under 7,000 just in one term. So you can see how that demand is just how it's risen.
Yeah.
And we just don't have enough staff and enough funds
can I
to
just
meet
let
that.
everybody know that this is on a budget. Lisa has a budget at the moment of under £200,000 a year.
Yeah, with this, yeah,
It's
so
extraordinary what you are doing with
yeah,
such a small amount of resource.
yeah. So we are really, you could imagine all our staff are working hard. So that's one. The other thing, we really want to get a campaign to raise that awareness, because even to get to the top, people at the top, I've tried to connect with MPs, I've tried to connect, and we get so much pushback, and that's one of my frustrating parts of the job, is that lack of understanding. I don't think you realize exactly what is happening to the children. I don't know, if some people at the top don't even want it to be promoted because it would be so horrifying, and so on. But I think also that demand, there was something we really keen to do is kind of raise that awareness to try and reduce demand, particularly of the cocaine demand, and target kind of the middle class kind of cocaine usage that's going on at the moment. Because I think if they actually realized where they're getting their drugs from, what is happening to children when when they are ordering those drugs, I really think it would make people think. And we are looking at doing like a short film or short awareness film to just hit home, what happens, to a child if when you're ordering these drugs. Because I think it really needs to hit home, and we really need to reduce that demand, to stop the children being so horrifically harmed.
Well, if there's anyone on here that might be able to help with any of those things, obviously, please do get in touch with us and we can put you in touch with Lisa. But I'm sure there are lots, but please do, anyone with a question, if you'd like to come on, raise your hand and come on camera, please do so now. And I'd just like to comment on Paris, in that you've put some comments in the chat, and congratulations on being able to have survive all of the things that you've mentioned. Thank you for sharing that with the group. I have iPhone. I don't know what your name is, I'm afraid, iPhone. But please, would you like to come on camera to ask Lisa a question?
I think I'm the iPhone. I'm not entirely sure. Is this correct?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, so yeah, I work for a deferred prosecution scheme in Bristol. And what we find is we're targeting the younger age groups, but we don't feel like we necessarily have the assistance of all of these schools who we try and work with. We feel like some of the schools downplay the problems because they don't have enough responses available, and they have a duty of care. They don't like to honestly engage with the problems that their schools have, which makes it harder for us to support their young people's transitions. And I was wondering if you had any advice on how we should go to interact with institutions that we believe suffer from these problems but don't acknowledge their own issues.
Would you just be able to quickly explain what you mean by deferred prosecution?
Basically, so in our work, that's not in schools. If a young person's been involved in some serious offensive, but they're in the early stage of it, say, for example, being caught with a zombie knife and 22 wraps of cocaine, they can complete community workshops, fitness activities, and one-to-one mentoring. And if they pass it for 6 months, they get no further action. I'd say we have a 66% pass rate and 1/3 return back to their normal lives. But we're trying to take the learning, which has been very significant, that we've made in this project, it's been going for 5 or 6 years now, to interact with people at a younger age. We recognize, like Lisa, the 1/3 who we're unable to help with our scheme are literally choosing custodial sentences over interventions. They are trapped. We wish to engage with them at younger ages, but the institutions aren't always acquiescent.
Lisa.
Yeah, I do. I totally understand where you're coming from, and that's one of our kind of difficulties as well. It's that lack of understanding. And I think, we've had as well where young people, they clearly are victims to this, but are criminalized completely. And that is a real struggle to kind of raise that awareness. Regarding schools, I have seen that myself. I do think it's getting better, slightly better in certain areas. I think there are certain schools that still put a barrier up, and that might be because they don't want to highlight there's a drug problem, or it might, kind of affect the reputation. I think there's sometimes that happens. We are just persistent. We kind of highlight the facts of what's going on. Really kind of realize that there are children as young as 6 being exploited. The importance of getting in early. Sometimes we'll offer first to kind of go in and educate the staff. So that's how sometimes, if we've gone in to talk to the staff first, or had a meeting with the head teacher or the safeguarding lead, and talked about kind of give them an education session, that sometimes does help then help identify some of those early intervention, and kind of bring us in to do some more education work with young people. I would just say you've got to be persistent. It is kind of the key, because that's something we have to do all the time. And it's hard sometimes when you get pushed back. But we just feel we just keep going for the children, because we know a lot of these children don't have voices. They won't be able to say, a lot of the time the children won't tell us that they're involved in counter, because out of fear, just out of absolute fear. So we'll just keep going, and there's times to say it is hard when you get pushed back. Sometimes my staff have been in tears of frustration, but we won't give up, because we just feel the children need us. And it is about other agencies similar to us who have that same understanding. We'll work together, support each other. That's what we need to do.
Lisa, thank you. Just before I go to the next question, we've had some really helpful messages in the chat, which we will make sure Lisa gets. So thank you for people who have put suggestions into the chat line. Nikki Amor, would you like to ask yours while Amy?
Yes. So my question for Lisa is whether there's any correlation between ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, and the people that get recruited. I should say, I'm chief exec of the Equine Therapy Centre, and we've worked with kids at risk alongside the police, previously in Gloucestershire. We've now moved to Monmouthshire, so we're setting up sort of connections all over again. But I'm just wondering whether there is any correlation, or whether you're aware of any correlation between kind of those who get recruited and ACEs, potential ACEs scores.
Are you talking about like adverse, kind of the back? Yeah. So there's not been much research on this, but there one bit of research that has come out is a connection between children who have witnessed domestic abuse within the home to being exploited into county lines, criminal exploitation. So there has been a bit of research on that. And I think the reason for that is, one, because they're more out the house, because they want to be away from the home, to get away from the domestic abuse. But also there's parallels to domestic abuse, to criminal exploitation, in that there's control and coercion, there's physical abuse, and so on. So there is a connection there. There does seem to be a connection around victims of domestic abuse within the home and then being recruited. So that's the only kind of research that I've known of that's got that connection. Another one, I would say children with ADHD. There seems to be a high amount on the spectrum as well. Children who struggle with friendships. is one that we see. That's through our kind of own research of the work that we do. So yeah, children who struggle with friendships don't quite struggle to kind of connect
So
with
it's that
friends,
connection. Yeah. Yeah.
because that's how they kind of recruit as well, making them feel they're part of a group. So if they are struggling, yeah, then that they are very vulnerable to being drawn into that, because that's how they kind of groom them in, is making them believe they're part of this amazing friendship group that's going to take care of them, look out for them. So yeah, that's definitely, those are the kind of key,
Okay.
vulnerabilities.
Okay. I was just interested because we are working with a number of domestic violence organizations locally now, and I just had a feeling it might correlate. So thanks for that.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
More work to do.
Thanks, Nikki. Just to again respond to a few comments in the chat. So Helen Jones, yes, the video version, we'll put this on our YouTube channel, so you will be able to share it if you'd like to. Amy Harrison, Lisa, we've got somebody up in Manchester asking if they might volunteer because they're interested in or learn more, possibly setting up some kind of similar service in Manchester. So Amy, if you send through perhaps your contact details and a bit more about yourself, we'll be able to forward that on to Lisa so she can get in touch with you. And then thank you to Hannah Snowden. We'll definitely pass that on. So sorry, I'm just going through. So Judith Gardner has asked a question around, she'd like some advice on the most effective steps a local community project can take to help safeguard children. It sounds like they're in the rural context of Herefordshire, where there's a lot of drug use and cocaine debt amongst young people.
So like regarding community, I would say, the more numbers you have, and the more awareness in that community does kind of push away the attraction of that particular area. So, what we do as a community, on our community awareness, we do have leaflets, which I'm really happy to give out to people so they can print out. And we go into coffee shops, into banks, any kind of taxi ranks, and really raise that awareness and kind of highlight where they need to report. So it's just going in, knowing there's kind of key signs to look out for, and giving guidelines of where they need to report things. So people are becoming more and more aware. We've also done community events where, in a town hall, we've invited, had the police, like ourselves, and the drug workers and so on to do kind of an awareness session. And if it's promoted really well, if it's advertised really well, we've had up to 200 people fill up a hall, and it's really kind of got the whole community together going, right, we're going to do something about this. Let's get some posters up. Let's get this up. We'll look out for the young people. So, it's getting that voice out. What I do say is don't make it a taboo subject. Get that message out there is really key, because it's everywhere. That it's absolutely everywhere. So it's getting that awareness out there.
You mentioned leaflets and promotional material explaining. Is that sort of thing available on your website? Can we point people to your website?
We've got some on our website, but if they contact us, we do have specific leaflets for certain like businesses. So for banks, they need to look out for something specific. For coffee shops, they need to, taxi ranks, they need to, hotels and so on. So if anyone wants those, they can contact us, and then I can give them a copy and they can just print them out.
That sounds really helpful.
Fine.
Thank you. Gail Bunting will come to you in a second, but Amy from Literacy Pirates, her question is that they work with children in the transition ages from year 5 to year 8, and asking, is there anything that you would recommend they look out for, especially in these early stages, that could help with prevention?
I would say, so we always, when we do our training, is say the early signs to look out for there's 2 things: change of behavior alongside a change of friendship group. That is generally a mixture of ages and generally would be slightly older. So it's looking out for, as I say, those 2 things are your key early signs. So the change of behaviors would be they'd probably become a bit cockier and a bit kind of macho kind of thing, like I'm big, I'm untouchable. They will use language that you've never heard them use before. Things like they might even change their kind of music, so drill music. They become a little bit more secretive. And those are kind of the early signs. They become more disruptive, maybe pull away from educational, if they're into football or sport, they pull away from those kind of activities. So those are your early signs alongside a change of friendship group. So they'll be putting away from no friend and mixed with this older kind of mixed age group. Those are your key early signs, and that's when you need to act very, very quickly. So that would be getting the parents in, getting your local PCSO in, and really kind of and getting someone to work with that young person and helping them understand what could be happening to them. So the key is to get in as early as possible, and those are the key early signs.
Thank you to Anne Beattie, who works for the Steve Sinnott Foundation. And Lisa, I think you'll be really delighted that she's very keen that you get in touch. She's left her email address about how they might be able to support you. So Gail Bunting, would you like to come on camera and ask your question? We are going to have to finish officially recording at 1, but if there's anybody who would like to ask any quick questions after that, we'll be very happy for you to stay on. And also, we will, if you would like to get in touch with Lisa, we'll get Lisa to give us the general email address for Escapeline before we finish. Gail, I think we might have a problem with your sound.
Oh, is it?
Oh no, we can hear you. Sorry, there's a sound from something else. Please do, Gail, come ask a question.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I don't know, my video's not coming off. Apologies for that. So hi, Lisa, thank you so much. That was unbelievable. I mean, I've wrote about 5 pages of notes here. I'm the CEO for the charity Invisible Traffic. We're based in Northern Ireland, and we work with 4 to 7-year-olds and also then the 12 to 24-year-olds with 2 education resources. The primary school that we run with the resources is a series of 6 films, and then for the older group, it's workshops we do. So I'm just interested to hear what your resources are for the schools. I'm just trying to think, can we help each other in some way, or I don't know, what conversation for another time, but we spent time over lockdown just revamping the whole thing, and we actually recorded young actors to appear in the videos with animation, so it's very child friendly, and it doesn't just go to county lines, it goes through sort of exploitation in all its forms, as in online, digital, identity fraud, all that.
Yeah, we do like a 6-week program, so which covers all aspects of county lines. So that would be kind of the recruitment, how county lines operate, the drugs, why they encourage young people to take drugs, what drugs they introduce to children, young people, knife crime that goes with this, and social media. So the kind of social media sites that they recruit on, sexual exploitation and peer-on-peer abuse, because that's something that's also very much connected with this as well. So we do all kind of aspects. I mean, it's something I'm going to put my email address on. In fact, if I can send it now, it's inquiries. If I just send it out, and then it might be easy, just contact me direct.
Yeah.
So that we can connect.
Sorry, Lisa, we'll do that, because the problem over here in Northern Ireland is they don't recognise county lines.
Yeah.
And on our doorstep, and I'm trying to lobby government to say, look, it's happening here, but they
we'll help with that. Yeah, because we have the same problem.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of the time. Yeah.
Well,
Lisa, thank you.
Thank you both. And I think this is a good time to just sort of wrap up the formal proceedings here, because I just wanted to say, Lisa, thank you so much indeed. We've got lots more questions in the chat, and which we'll forward to you, but everybody is clearly so impressed by what you're doing and the difference that you're making and the solutions that you found to these incredibly difficult and entrenched issues. And yeah, you're inspiring in what you're doing, and I hope that you will have made some really useful connections through this conversation, and that please do people share it far and wide. We'll email you all with a link to the recording, and we'll share Lisa's the email that she's put in the chat. So if people want to get in touch direct, they can do that. But yeah, just Lisa, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure.